All right, good afternoon. Trip announcement. The Secretary General will be leaving New York tomorrow, June 7th, for a visit to Central Asia that will take him to Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Turkmenistan. In Astana, in Kazakhstan, the Secretary General will attend the celebrations in honor of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization's Head of State Council. The next day, he will meet with President Nazarbayev and address the plenary session of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Then on Saturday, June 10th, the Secretary General will be in Samarkand in Uzbekistan, where he will open a national forum on the Sustainable Development Goals with President Mirziyoyev. In the afternoon, he will travel to Nukus to visit a ship graveyard on the Aral Sea. Then on Sunday, the Secretary General will be in Bishkek in Kyrgyzstan to meet with President Atambev, and then on to Osh, where he will attend a commemoration of the June 2010 events. The next day, on the 12th of June, he will meet with the President of Tajikistan, President Rahmon, and attend a conference on the Sustainable Development Goals in Dushanbe before visiting areas impacted by climate change. Then on Tuesday, in Turkmenistan, in Ashgabat, the Secretary General will meet with President Berdi Mohamedov, and in the afternoon, he will participate in a high-level UN Central Asian dialogue on implementing the UN's global terrorism strategy in Central Asia. And the Secretary General will then be making his way back to New York. Also, I wanted to flag that as we speak, the Deputy Secretary General is meeting with civil society representatives who have handed over to her a petition with over 2.5 million signatures from people in the United States and around the world calling for the implementation of the Paris Agreement and reiterating their commitments to take action on climate change. And there'll be photos of the meeting available later today. And from Afghanistan, the head of the UN mission in that country, Mr. Tadamichi Yamamoto, today expressed support for the Afghan-led Kabul process meeting, a forum to increase regional cooperation for peace, stability, which was held in the country's capital. Speaking at the Kabul process meeting, Mr. Yamamoto said he was encouraged by the participation of high-level representatives from 26 countries, which is a signal of solidarity with the Afghan people, particularly in the wake of recent attacks in Kabul. He added that the UN welcomes President Ghani's renewed commitment to a peace process and to starting a national dialogue, and stressed that inclusion of various stakeholders, such as women representatives, civil society organizations, and youth, will be a key component of long-term sustainable peace in the country. And the UN Human Rights Council's 35th session opened in Geneva today with the High Commissioner for Human Rights calling for stepped-up cooperation by member states. Zaid Rad al-Hussein expressed his concern of what he called, quote, disgraceful incidents, unquote, of personal threats and of insults directed at special procedures mandate holders. He noted that 3 of them, the special rapporteurs on Myanmar, Iran, and summary executions, in the context of the discussions on the Philippines, have recently been subjected to smear and hate campaigns. The High Commissioner stressed that Human Rights Council members and candidates for future membership have a particular responsibility to cooperate, noting that Indonesia, Egypt, Nepal, Venezuela, and the Philippines may have pending requests for visits. He added that Burundi, which was elected to the Council in 2015, continues to commit some of the most serious human rights violations dealt with by the body, but the government has suspended all forms of cooperation with the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. And you can read his full statement online. And our colleagues at the UN Refugee Agency warned that without urgent additional funding, some 60,000 Syrian refugee families will be cut from monthly cash assistance programs in Lebanon and Jordan as early as July, which is next month. Vital parts of UNHCR's response to the needs of Syrian refugees are critically underfunded. Additional contributions are urgently required to avoid dramatic and deep cuts to both basic and life-saving services to Syrian refugees in the second half of the year. The situation is most dramatic in Lebanon and Jordan, where a number of direct cash assistance activities could dry up in less than 4 weeks. In Lebanon, where UNHCR needs $116 million, direct cash assistance programs for refugees will be affected first. Meanwhile, in Jordan, the agency urgently requires $71 million. And a new report by UNESCO shows that the amount of aid allocated to education has been falling for 6 years in a row. And that trend must be reversed if countries are to achieve Goal 4 of the SDGs. Today, aid to education stands at $12 billion, 4% lower than 2010. UNESCO says that aid needs to be multiplied by at least 6 to achieve common education goals and must go to countries most in need. And yesterday, the UN Environment Programme appointed a new Goodwill ambassador. Actor and environmentalist Adrien Grenier is the new Goodwill ambassador. He is best known for his work in the show and film Entourage, but also as a longtime activist on conservation and ocean issues, most notably through the Lonely Whale Foundation, which he co-founded. In his new role, Mr. Grenier will advocate for drastically reducing single-use plastic and for the protection of marine species. He will also encourage his followers to make conscious consumer decision choices to allow for their environmental footprint. And the honor roll is rolling again, thanks to a full payment from Cambodia. We now stand at 104. And immediately following this briefing, the Oceans Conference spokesperson Damian Cardona will brief you on today's meetings. At 4:30 p.m., there will be a press briefing by the Foreign Minister of Chile, Geraldo Munoz, who you remember well, on the Oceans Conference and Chile's participation on the creation of a marine protected areas. And tomorrow at 11 o'clock, His Serene Highness Prince Albert of Monaco will be here in this very room to brief you on the context of the Oceans Conference. And lastly, Enalepto, as they say in Greece, share with you the latest installment of Comics United Nations, which focuses on protecting life below water. This project which aims to teach kids about the Sustainable Development Goals. More information on UNICEF's website. And we're working on a special edition on spokespeople, but that may not be too much fun. Masoud, you were full of anticipation, so here you go.
I just want to know, why isn't the Secretary General visiting this region, in particular, the Middle East, after what has happened, after the sanctions against Qatar imposed by Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and others? There's a humanitarian crisis going on. I mean, there in Qatar itself, about 550 Pakistanis are stranded to go to Saudi Arabia, and then from Saudi Arabia, people coming back on Qatar.
We're very much aware of the current situation. We're also noting that there appears to be a number of regional diplomatic initiatives underway, so we will keep a watch on that.
So, but isn't the Secretary General going to engage these?
I will leave it at that for the time. Masoud, I will leave it at that for the time being. Fethi and then Matthew.
Thank you, Stéphane. With regard to the Secretary General trip to Central Asia and his meeting with President Nazarbayev of Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan now is a major player in the Syrian crisis. Is there any intention from the Secretary General to try to merge the two so far parallel paths, the Astana and the Geneva process?
I have no doubt that the issue of Syria will come up in the discussions. We don't see them as parallel paths, but we see the Astana process as very much supporting the Geneva process. As you know, Mr. de Mistura and some of his aides have attended Astana meetings. We're very grateful for the discussions that go on there, especially on the issue of cessation of hostilities and a lowering of the violence, but we very much see it in support of the existing Geneva process. Mr. Lee.
Sure, thanks a lot. Two questions. One is, as you know, Nikki Haley has called on the Secretary General Antonio Guterres to initiate a special investigation into the murders of Michael Sharp and Zeta Catalan. I saw you were quoted something about I want to understand your position of something about using maximum authority. Doesn't he have the authority to investigate the murder of UN staff members?
Well, I think, first of all, we obviously the call from Ambassador Haley, and we've seen calls from Sweden as well. We take the request very seriously. I think they echo our own concern. The Secretary General has consistently said that he and the Secretary would do everything they could to make sure justice was done in this case. while recognizing first and foremost that the responsibility for a criminal investigation rests with the government of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. We cannot substitute ourselves, the Secretary General, the Secretary cannot substitute ourselves for the criminal justice system of a sovereign state. We're actively cooperating with national authorities conducting criminal investigations, but we're also ready to implement any Security Council decision on this matter. As you know, there is a board of inquiry that was appointed. They are full at work. We expect their conclusions, their work to be done by the end of July. They are there to establish the facts and, if possible, identify the perpetrators. And they'll submit a report with recommendations to the Secretary General. We're also looking at further options that may be available to us. But that review, the work of the BOI, should provide a good basis for putting together a set of possible next steps for the Secretary General member states to consider in the murder of to find out what happened, not only find out what happened to the murder, to our two murdered colleagues, but also to ensure that justice is done and those who killed them are brought to justice.
Since often these board of inquiries are not made public, is the intention at a minimum to at least make it public?
We will, as we have done in certain cases. We will share with you what we can and make public what we can of the board of inquiry in a way that doesn't jeopardize any future investigations that may take place.
And do you have any response? I'm sure you've seen that the Houthis, or in fact more than the Houthis, the Supreme Political Council in Sana'a has now said formally that the envoy they're not going to deal with him, and he's not welcome to go to Sana'a anymore because they find him biased. And I know you always say, he stands behind him, he's not biased. But if one party is literally basically PNGing him, although they're not the government, if he can't go there, what's his
I think
his role?
we've seen the statements. I think his work continues. His dialogue with all the parties continue. I think we've seen these statements from one side or in any sort of mediation effort the UN is involved in. It's part of the work, and he continues his work. Yes, sir.
Yeah, in Raqqa, many of the civilians who tried to escape came under shelling from the air. More than 25 civilians died. Many of them are children. Do you have any statement on that, or what's the position? Also, I have another question about Mosul.
We're obviously very concerned for the situation of the civilians that are currently in Raqqa, for their concern for their safety, concern for their protection, not just in the recent days, but over the last months and longer. They have been subjected and exposed to daily fighting, to violence, death, and obviously also including attacks on civilian infrastructures, which include schools and hospitals, markets, water infrastructure. We've seen that happen quite a bit in Syria. Our humanitarian colleagues, both from the UN and the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, have developed and are regularly updating a plan for Raqqa, which outlines preparedness and response efforts needed to meet the estimated needs of about 440,000 men, women, and children who may be impacted by the current Raqqa offensive. UN and international NGO partners from various locations, including within Syria and cross-border, have been delivering assistance to internally displaced people and people in need in the area while scaling up their response. Since March of this year, UN agencies and their partners have been providing humanitarian assistance, including food, non-food items, hygiene kits, nutrition bars, and so forth, to people in need, including IDPs in camps who have been displaced from Raqqa, from Deir ez-Zor, and from rural Aleppo. Second question.
How about accountability for these indiscriminate attacks from the air?
As we've said, there will need to be accountability for all the crimes that have been committed in Syria since the beginning of this conflict. As you know, the General Assembly passed and created an accountability mechanism. We are currently working, and hopefully to have very soon the head of that mechanism appointed, and already a small team is working on that project. Yes.
On Mosul,
yeah.
On Mosul. Some videos emerging from Mosul show that white phosphorus is systematically used against densely populated areas of civilians. That's, of course, by any standard, is illegal. How does the United Nations react to that?
We're aware of the reports of the use of white phosphorus. Owing to the location and the incidents and the ongoing combat, we're not in a position to confirm these reports. We obviously would be extremely concerned if these turned out to be true. Yes, sir. And then Mr.
Thank you. WFP states on its website that starting 2017, it plans to gradually introduce a new distribution modality, which is called cash-based transfer, CBT, in one of the camps in Tindouf in Algeria by transfer of $5 US per month per person through vouchers which can be redeemed in WFP contracted camp shops. My question is, since we are now already in June 2017, has this CBT modality been implemented in the camps?
I don't know off the top of my head. I can put you in touch with our WFP colleagues here in New York who'll be able to answer you. Mr. Sato, yeah.
Thank you, Stéphane. Yesterday, more than 120 U.S. mayors and 9 state governors, together with the business and university, submitted the statements to the United Nations and the UNFCCC, saying that the strong support to fulfill the Paris Agreement. Do you have any comment on this statement?
Yes, we have received a letter from a host of local authority leaders, civil society, as well as our also with the help of the Secretary General's Special Envoy on Climate, Michael Bloomberg. I think the Secretary General and the UN system writ large has been very consistent in saying that if we're going to succeed in mitigating and tackling the challenges of climate change, we need the active participation of local, of state, of regional leaders. It is not something that is to be left to national governments alone, and we can't get to where we need to get without the help of these local leaders. Matthew.
I have something about the Qatar issue, but I did want to ask you, because I asked last week, and given the reporting around the world about the situation in the Al Rif region of Morocco, not only was the one protest leader arrested and called for a general strike, now 2 other protest leaders, Najik Hamjik and Cilia Ziani, were both arrested, and there's been a press fallout, of expulsion of reporters, and now a newspaper in Bahrain ordered closed for reporting on the protests. So I guess I'm asking you again. It seems like it's a.
Yeah, I don't have anything for you on this today. I should hopefully have something for you tomorrow. But obviously, on the issue of the press, we stand loud and clear for the rights of reporters to report.
And on Qatar, I just wanted to. I understand that it's a tricky situation. You've answered some other questions about it. I went back and looked at where the Secretary General had welcomed the release of that hunting party in Iraq, and now at least some are reporting that part of this rift involves a possible major ransom payment for their release, up to like hundreds of millions of dollars. And I wanted to know, what's the UN's position on the payment of dollars to hostage takers that may or may not be on listed terrorist groups? And 2, was the Secretary, is there any vision of that welcoming, or what do you think of it?
No, I think the welcoming was welcoming on humanitarian grounds. I have no comment, because we have no knowledge of the modalities of how these people came to be released. We welcome the fact that they were released, and I'm not going to comment on hypotheticals.
Yeah, there are some reports that French special forces are killing French nationals in Mosul. Targeting them, snipers targeting French nationals who probably are involved with the terrorist groups in Mosul. How does the United Nations view such?
I have no first-hand knowledge of these things. Masoud.
Can you please tell us why is the Secretary General shying away from handling the conflict zone, and why is he not taking them head on, like for instance what's happening in Qatar and what's happening in India and Pakistan? And these are the conflict zones.
I don't think the Secretary General is shying away from handling conflict in any way, shape or form. You asked me about the issue with Qatar and a number of other Gulf countries. I answered you. We're obviously watching the situation closely. There are a number of diplomatic initiatives that are at play. If the Secretary General's, as a matter of principle, in any conflict, in any point of tension, if the Secretary General's good offices are needed, they're always available.
No, but the reason why I'm saying it, that there are conflict. I mean, the humanitarian conditions being created, and he has not noticed that, and he has not referred them, talked to the parties involved. Like
I think the Secretary General notices what's going on in the world. Nizar.
Yeah, on the same subject, Newsweek yesterday reported that one of the conditions Saudi Arabia is putting against Qatar is to close Al Jazeera channel. Why isn't that? I mean, curbing media.
I have no knowledge. We have no inside knowledge of those discussions. So I'm not going to comment on the current situation more than I've said.
But these are reports which are published already.
Madame.
Thank you, Stéphane. On the same subject, do you believe that it's interesting to have the ambassador, Saudi ambassador, to come here and to give us impression or ideas of what's going on in this?
It's not for me to push ambassadors in front of the microphones, but you are most welcome, I'm sure, to ask them directly. I will get our Mr. Damien. Thank you.